Hello, everyone. Welcome, everyone dropping in. It is early evening where I am. I think it's afternoon where you are, right? So, everyone, welcome back. Welcome again. Hello for the first time. So, if you are with us for the first time, this is a webinar series on journey management. And for those who are new, for those who are here, please drop your name in the chat. Say maybe a few words where you're from, where you're calling in from. So I am Jochem, as you might know. I'm calling in from Amsterdam. So drop it in the chat. Say hello. Welcome to everyone listening in. This is going to be a fun one. We'll let everyone to drop in. Hello, Juan from Barcelona. Hola. You are the first to drop it in the chat. Hello from Bilbao. Nice. Spain is represented. That's good. Copenhagen, Paris. Rafael from Mexico. Good afternoon to you, Laura from Iowa. Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you for dropping in or using the time in the chat to say hello. It's also nice that you now know how to use the chat. So you can use that one or the Q&A button because Todd and I will have a wide-ranging conversation today. And anything you want to ask in between at the end, please drop them in the Q&A and we'll make sure we can tackle most of it, a lot of it. It's going to be fun. Hey from Denmark, Charlotte says. So hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to kick it off. And I have a very special guest today. So the title of today is also the title of his book, The 10-Second Journey. And then, of course, we're paraphrasing why growth should matter to every CXO. So before I intro, I have Todd Unger with me. Hey, Todd.
Hi there. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you for joining me. This is a very exciting one. And let me tell you why. Let me tell everyone why I came across your book a while back, and the title obviously is an eye catcher. But then when I dug in, it's like, okay, this is exactly the person that we should learn from. So you are the Chief Experience Officer, the CXO and Senior Vice President of Marketing and Member Experience at the AMA. You're overseeing membership, marketing, customer experience initiatives, as well as leading the organizational wide digital effort. Not a small job, I can imagine. Earlier in your career, you also spent a decade in brand management and advertising at Procter and Gamble and Leo Burnett. So I think we both share a love for building brands, but doing it in a customer-centric way. But I want to start with the 10-second journey and might be misleading and why that is. And I want to put something on the screen and I'm going to ask you to tell me what that is. This is a nice image of you with something that I don't think is a 10-second journey, but you have to tell me, like, what are we seeing here and what is this? And maybe like that's a nice way to start with who you are, what you do, and what are we seeing here, Todd?
Yes, I have a personal belief that if your team produces anything that's actually physically larger than you, it's definitely worth celebrating. This is an actual like a service blueprint for one of our educational platforms that we produce, where we are trying to understand the points of friction in the process of our online education offering and how we eliminate those points of frictions and basically increase engagement with the product. So this is just a terrific example of the kinds of things your customer experience team can and should be doing for you to eliminate friction and unlock growth.
Oh, that's awesome. So we're gonna dig into the growth aspect mainly because I'm using a stat in many encounters I have with leaders where I say, look, 60% of CX initiatives fail because they are not tied to business metrics, right? We have beautiful NPS programs, we're running left and right, we're doing our best to make experience a very important part of the business, but yet over half of our initiatives fail. And I think you and I share that because it's all about growth. It's all about growing the business, whether it's members. I assume that is what you
Mhm.
do with the AMA, but you can tell us a little bit about that. But it's also about growing revenue. It's about growing your customer base, growing your loyal customer base who like to stay longer and be happy customers, pay again for your services. But maybe like we're gonna dig into that. What does the AMA do? Like for everyone who is not familiar with the work you guys are doing.
So the AMA is the American Medical Association. It's the largest and kind of leading physician organization in the US. We are the physician's powerful ally in patient care. And so we represent physicians with a unified voice to all the parties, and there are many in healthcare. We help drive the future of medicine. We try to remove all the obstacles that get between physicians and their patients and delivering the care that they want. And we also are, of course, a leader in addressing public health crises and chronic disease, which, of course, we just went through a big episode of that a couple of years ago. And it's an important role for an organization. And it is so much fun to help physicians take care of people. That's what I do.
I love that. Why did you take the job in the first place? I assume they found you and said, "Look, this is interesting for you." But like, what is the real reason why you are so passionately believing in this is the mission I want to sign up for?
So it is kind of a funny story because I worked in a very, very different job before this. I was actually in horse racing. Yes, that is correct. What you just heard. I was running basically chief digital officer and chief marketing officer for a media property called the Daily Racing Form, which here in the States is kind of the Bible for horse racing if you're a person who bets on horse races. But even though they were really different in terms of context, the actual operation and under the hood, pretty much the same thing. There's a kind of large premium content subscription operation where you're trying to acquire and retain customers with a huge content and digital marketing component. And the AMA was looking for somebody to kind of come in and help build that digital transformation for the entity. It's 176 plus years old at this point. And so they were looking for someone with the skill sets in the digital world, not necessarily that have been in healthcare for his whole life. So I'm just going to say lucky is how I can describe my arrival here. And it's been
Right.
7 years. I've been here for 7 years now, and it's changed a lot over the course of that 7 years and just so much progress.
I can imagine. So let's talk about the progress. What does growth mean to you? And I can also imagine that when they hired a chief experience officer, growth was maybe not even part of the job description. I mean, I rarely see it when I look at CXO roles when people have them. What I do see is that experience starts to roll up to the CRO, the chief revenue officer sometimes. But maybe let's dig into what growth means to you as a CXO and why you think it's important. Was it part of the job description when they hired you? And how do you think your role as a CXO should think about growth? And you can take that in many different directions as you want, but like I'm really curious how you think about growth as a concept and as an idea, why it's important to have that as the CXO.
The job title of Chief Experience Officer was a new one at the AMA, and I think to a certain extent kind of distinguished it from the Chief Marketing Officer at the time to just kind of separate that. But it was clear from the moment I got here that the main metric was about membership and membership growth. And so that was a very, very clear expectation of the role. It was very focused. And there was this kind of disconnect between, oh, I'm a chief experience officer, but I have a very growth-driven role. And how do I true those up? Because as I started to look at the literature, what's online about what experience is and what a chief experience officer does, there's a definite disconnect. And I think that was one of the motivating factors for the book. I mean, my whole career has been about growth, whether it was in brand management or advertising or in digitals, working for different kind of digital media companies or even in horse racing. It's all about getting more customers to more customers, period, keeping more customers, getting them to engage with your content, using the full kind of range of digital marketing platforms to do that. So to me, it's my natural inclination toward growth. And I think for anybody out there, it's your responsibility too. And I do remember times in my career where I thought my job was like this, like in the early days of digital, it was more like content and usage. But like in the end, if you're not on the side of growth, you're not delivering. And so for me, it's always been about how do I align what I'm doing with the growth objectives of the organization, whatever those may be. And I think that's a really important part. And I think over the course of time, we found that a lot of the pieces of the experience framework, namely marketing on the product side and customer service, they all belonged together, and so that role kind of folded into one bigger role that now I oversee all kind of four parts of the what I call the experience platform: product, marketing, commerce, and service. And so, there's some things like the things related to membership that are pretty close in and part of my team. And then we have a very large mission operation here at the American Medical Association. And those are the folks that I work with as partners to figure out how we package, distribute, kind of take to market a lot of the great work that they're doing. And then in some formats, then translate that into membership.
Make it sound very easy for everyone who is an aspiring CXO or wants their experience function to actually own these domains as well. But I can imagine it took also some building in the last 7 years. Can you like walk us through roughly what that was like from the day you started, how the org was then, how you've built it out, and how it's actually structured today to having those four functions roll up to you? Like, what are the changes you made, and what are the maybe the challenges you had to overcome, or maybe it was just so easy and everyone should just copy the way to do it. But like, can you walk us through like the biggest differences between when you started and how it's going?
Yeah, I think a big part of that is going to be structural and organizational in nature. And I think I mentioned at the in our last question, when I started, the kind of my purview was membership, and so I oversaw kind of all of the membership marketing parts of this, and it was mainly a heavy reliance on direct mail and kind of not digital in its approach. And I think I also had oversight of our customer service operation. And, those were the kind of two things. And there's a lot to do within that. I mean, right away, you start going through some of the steps that I outline in the playbook about who's the target audience, what's the proposition. And then you start to think about how am I going to begin to tell that story over what platforms am I going to do that? And then over the course of time, you start to figure out, well, this component of it and the marketing part of it, this component that the website, how it's being published is in a different group. These are all essential to building what we call our experience platform. How do we kind of start to make those work together? And then how do we start to knit together the work of so many other people across the organization so that it looks like one thing to the customer out there or the member and not a bunch of separate things that aren't working together necessarily. So that itself was my personal journey here. And I'm just lucky that the organization placed such an emphasis on progress on the digital side and about member experience and growth, that they're really kind of willing to do what it took to align those things into an experience platform. Because just in the end, and I think we'll get back to this maybe in another question, like how do you define experience? Like it's very different for lots of different organizations, but for us, we don't have we're not a retail establishment where people are walking in the door every day and having some kind of interaction with people that work there. This is not a hotel. It's not like that kind of thing, and we don't have more than a couple of kind of big live meetings a year. So what about the rest of the year? What's the experience of people with our organization? I think what I quickly kind of surmised with that, going to be digital. And so it was going to be based on content, it was going to be digital, and it was about having engagement that led to kind of what we'll just technically call conversion into membership.
And I can imagine I'm going to put a pin in how do you define experience. I want to come back to that. But you mentioned something else that it has to be consistent, or at least for the customer, for the member, it has to be like that one thing that we deliver versus like how all our departments are structured. And I can imagine that blueprint, that one journey, and there's many of those journeys that need to be rolled up together. When you started, I mean, it's all about membership growth, right? But when you start breaking that down, did you have a framework? Did you have a thought pattern on like how to break that down into parts that were actually manageable, whether it's a digital transformation that we should all go into this digital experience, but like how do you break it down? How do you break down a hairy topic like membership growth because it can come from any direction into tangible parts, into journeys, into KPIs? Can you share a little bit of the thinking, the frameworks you use, or how you actually structure that? And then I'll come back to like defining experience, but like maybe the structural question is like, how did you play it out in the beginning?
Yeah, it's funny. Right when I first started, my boss at the time asked if I would come speak to. We have kind of a group of people that are involved in marketing all across our organization, and would I come and present what I've learned so far about what we think the growth opportunities are. This is 3 days into my job, so let me just say I'm scrambling at this point, and I'm looking across the organization, thinking about where do I see potential sources of growth. And believe it or not, that blueprint that I laid out 3 days into my job was pretty accurate as a roadmap for the next 2 to 3 years. Because what anyone does when they go into a job, like you just start to analyze where do I think the sources of growth are going to be? And those all boil down to audiences. And so the number one thing in the playbook, not surprisingly, is target definition and audiences. And so a lot of kind of early foundational work was done there. The second part is, looking at the mechanics of, I came up with a term called the member machine. It's like, what are the mechanics that produce members? Like, what are those growth components and how are we going to get there? Well, I mean, you could look out and you'd say, like, I see that we have an email program, but it's not by any means in kind of best practice territory. So I'm just going to look at that as a possible short-term win and really dig in there. And so it's me sitting with a designer, changing templates, changing the way that the organization produced their email marketing programs. And then all of a sudden showing like, oh my goodness, you can create a 40% increase in members from email if you're just doing it in a different way. And so it is that kind of juxtaposition of like kind of longer term thinking under pressure to like scramble to look for those growth opportunities, and then just looking at short term fixes and not trying to sit around and wait 6 months to reveal some like big grand plan. I mean, that's going to come in time after you've had a chance to experiment and try different things and get your arms around the business. But in the meantime, you've already got off to fast progress, and people like that, and it makes them excited about your vision.
Yeah, I think I can attest to that. We had Steven van Bellegem. I don't know if you know him. He's a famous CX author, speaker, keynote speaker. He said the same thing. It's like people think way too big about their bigger initiatives and they want to do a big change and it takes 12 months to materialize. Well, you can also take down 12 really, really small friction points in any journey today, tomorrow, by just tweaking, by just changing and showing the impact of that. So, um, let's define what you mean by experience and then start looking into the idea of the 10-second journey specifically. So, how would you define experience? Or did you already define it and did I miss the definition? Like, how would you define it for us? Like, what is your definition?
So it's funny. I'm just going to go back to the question before this. One important thing I learned in my prior job was never to talk about those words, digital transformation, kind of like you
Right?
were saying, because nobody knows what that is. And it's really the component pieces of all the initiatives that are sit underneath it. If you just execute those in rapid progression, all of a sudden, a few years down the road, you can say, look, we've undergone a digital transformation. That's the knowledge I took into this job with the word experience. Because what quickly became apparent to me is that people don't understand that term. It's generally conflated with customer service, which is a component of customer experience, but not the same thing. Or it's thought of as kind of a live or retail concept about how you were treated as a customer, whether it's like a Starbucks or Disney World or whatever you want to talk about there. So I looked at that term and I'm like, I don't know how that applies to me and my job to deliver growth. So I had to make up my own definition at the time that felt right, and I called it the seamless integration of marketing, product, commerce, and service to acquire and retain customers. That's the kind of big vision of customer experience to me, and it does include and integrate all of those elements in the production of one thing that you're offering out there that's bigger than the product. And it's more than what happens at the end when somebody has a problem. It's that whole way through. And it's so important in the digital world because of how rapidly everything moves, hence 10 seconds.
Nice. I love that. I think Peter Drucker said it in the 50s, right? The only reason a business exists is to produce a customer. And I think he went on and said, and therefore we only have two functions, marketing and innovation. And today we now have like way more functions. And I think you're actually doing a modern version of what he said, and therefore it needs to be integrated, seamlessly integrated. So the journey, and maybe that's the best place to go next. It has to be 10 seconds. Can you give an example of how that plays out at the AMA?
Yeah.
Like how it works, how you came to that, and then we'll segue into the theory behind it, but maybe like a practical example.
Yeah. So for me, it is how do I get someone to pay attention to what the AMA is doing and be so compelled by what we offer that they're going to click on that and join. And that's really what it's all about. Now, what you find in the book is the work that leads to that 10-second customer journey, a lot of it begins before the clock starts. And so we want to be talking to the right people. We want to have a product proposition that is so strong and so compelling that it gets them to nod in agreement. And so when they see that ad come across digitally in their social feed, they receive a direct mail, some piece of direct mail that they don't hesitate. They don't need more information. They're going to sign up on the spot. That's really what the 10-second customer journey is, and anything that gets in the way of completing that task in that period of time is a source of friction and has to be eliminated. So if they land on go to a landing page and it's not clear what to do, they can't find themselves in our database, they can't figure out how to log in, the sign up process is wonky, anything that kind of gets in there in the way there, it's got to be fixed. And so if you just think about like how you just compressed so much of that process into this little period of time, but that's all you got because who spends a lot of time reading and thinking about stuff? It's got to be a no-brainer and make it through that process, or you may lose people forever. So that's kind of the gist of it. I think 10 seconds is a short period of time, but I just want everybody out there to think about what you saw on social media today. You're flipping through there and you see something that you weren't aware of before. I just used this example in something else. No-show socks. I don't know if it's summer here, it's hot. And so I'm interested vaguely in that, although I got like a closet full of like ones that don't work anymore. So I'm not really necessarily in market, but people know I'm into clothes. I'm into nice things. Like these are all things that you can have identified as part of your target audience and be targeting on social media platforms. And if you show me something that I can think about in less than 3 seconds, take me to a commerce site where what I'm getting is clear and compelling and easy. And I check out with Apple Pay. I really am done in 10 seconds. I didn't open my social feed thinking, I'm looking for a pair of no-show socks. But that's how commerce works today. They already know you're interested. They already have something compelling. It's not $100 million television ad. It's a $5,000 little clip. These are all components of today's 10-second customer journey. And if you start paying attention to why you're interested in what you see as you peruse through your daily digital life, you'll start to appreciate more what it takes to put that 10-second customer journey together on the other end.
Yeah. I love that. I think that appreciation, I think many of us share. Do you keep a collection of like, hey, this is a nice 10-second journey. This is a good example. Do you have like a little document, or is that not something you do?
I take a picture.
Right.
When I'm going through different stuff, I just took a picture yesterday. Uh, People find my book to be somewhat revealing about my personality, but I don't, whatever. I don't care. I saw something and it was like, if you have dark circles under your eyes, and it was for guys, try this. And so I'm like, okay, I'm game to find out what it is. And it took me
It's
to like,
working. I don't see any, right? It's like,
I would
or you
say
haven't got the
I
product
may
yet.
just thinking about it made it better, but I checked it out and it took me into like a quiz where I'm like four questions in and they're asking me about all sorts of other stuff. And I'm like, I'm out. So they're not thinking about the 10-second customer journey. They're thinking about something else. I just wanted to know what is this thing and how much does it cost? I probably would have been a customer. Then you could have followed up with me and addressed all of my other skin problems. But it's backwards.
Right.
And I just like everybody out there, it's such a great learning experience just to follow these journeys through that you see all the time in your daily digital life and take pictures of them and like talk to your teammates about I really liked how this thing worked or boy, this one was really off. What do we learn from these things about how to create that 10-second customer journey?
Right. So this is help me understand this. Like maybe I'm asking the obvious thing, but like you mentioned task journeys, right? I have this task, I'm gonna buy this, I'm gonna do it right now, I'm gonna go. That can be done in a 10-second journey, but we also know that, especially in B2B, I mean, you work in B2B, these examples were like great for when you're a consumer, when you're like in market for something, when you're at the bottom of the funnel, you're ready to buy or you're ready to do an impulse purchase. Like it's great, but like if you have a task journey, which can be like find my bank to get a mortgage, right? That can be a task journey. You can do it in one
Yeah.
go. But your bigger goal is like get the mortgage. So you're like, that journey can never be a 10-second journey. So if I am now in an insurance company, like many of our customers are, if I am in a healthcare company that has like many complicated services and long trajectories with patients, like how would I take that? Like not everything is a 10-second journey, is it? Or do you think differently about that?
Well, here's what I say in the book. We all understand like the marketing funnel and everybody thinks about it in the way you just kind of laid out, which is like up here and we just kind of progress, as I say, gingerly and sequentially through all the stages of awareness and interest and trial and, down to the bottom of the funnel. Now I'm ready to act. And listen, we understand like the process that it takes to get people through that. But today's day and age in the digital world, it doesn't work like that. And so I came up with my own term. I call it the tornado funnel because all of those sequences or all those segments of the funnel that we think traditionally or sequentially in the tornado funnel, they're all happening really rapidly and sometimes like simultaneously, almost as if they wrapped around you. So no matter what kind of business you're in, you have to think about the ways that people are progressing through their decision-making process are not the same as they were before, and they can be moved and want to be moved quickly through the process because they're just trying to complete a task. They don't want to spend any more time than you want them to spend. And so the job is like whoever can make it happen the fastest is going to be able to win in this. And you need to think about how do I facilitate that funnel so it moves faster? How do I incorporate the concept of service as a pervasive element to help customers go quickly through that? And how do I remove every possible friction point? So maybe it doesn't happen in 10 seconds, but the concept is still there. It's way faster than it used to. And it's up to you to make it that way.
Right? Love the tornado concept. It's like a big blender of all the touch points and thoughts and actions people do and all the different types of persons that you would like to call your customers are doing in different directions and different orders of. And I think that is the complexity we face, right? One of our customers said, We have a huge spike in cancellation rates. And if we ask our team specifically what is happening at like the end of the funnel where that event is actually measured, they would never come up with the answer because the
Mm.
problems were actually way earlier in the journey, as they would say it. But it was all about getting them from like inaction to action and where that friction was in that journey, which correlated to like the cancellation rates. But to get there, you should not have the blindfolders on. Like I'm in this stage of the journey, so I like the tornado way better because that also assumes like it can be here and there, where the actual friction points are that you should be solving to get a better conversion at the bottom.
And I love the story you just told too, because it illustrates where the discipline of CX
Right.
can really operate. And a lot of people don't understand it from the outside. It feels somewhat insular sometimes, this kind of discipline. But maybe if I were looking at the problem that you just described 5 years ago, I would have said, like, is that a product problem? I might ask my product team, or is that a marketing problem? I don't know what the problem is. And so a CX team, the kind of people that prepared that service blueprint that you saw at the beginning of this conversation, are people that I can bring into that mix and unify all of the folks involved and really diagnose all of the points of friction involved along that journey, and then pinpoint where actually is the problem. Because we just that service blueprint you saw up front, it's very interesting because my goal of growth and that educational platform is to get more people to complete courses. And so if you were to look at that goal and say, like, why isn't it tracking, let's say, with a number of members that are engaged in that? Well, it turns out there are like 150 reasons why. Well, it could be that they're not getting their initial sign up login information. It could be that they can't find it when they come to the site. It could be a myriad of things that you just might not know from any one particular group, whereas a CX team can kind of step in and make sense of that.
Yeah. Maybe that also speaks to like the title of the last chapter of your book, right? Bringing it all together. And I think this is the one thing that is consistent across all these companies that are investing in experience, not just for like the sake of like being a nice experience post service, but to really be holistically looking at the brand, looking at the whole positioning, looking at the whole growth of the business. But it's hard. So how have you been doing this, that togetherness? How have you been able to pull it all together? Because typically, even CX should be looking holistically. We see it getting stuck in our own silo, and we have our own dashboards and we have our own metrics, like the NPS programs we're running, and it's still like very fragmented. All the promise is to do it horizontally across the business and to get unstuck. Like this is the whole point of why I'm interviewing you and all the other guests is to get rid of that construct in a lot of organizations and to truly be like horizontal. But what have you done and what have you seen as successful, maybe at the AMA or in general, how you're also advising others on doing it together? Because I think that is the point of the last chapter in your book and also what you're describing here.
Yeah, and I'm sure folks in the audience like understand the reality of most organizations today are set up and still in the silos from like business of like 30 years ago before digital. And those just don't work anymore. And so the job as a chief experience officer for me is really to work on how do you unify product marketing, commerce, and service. And that is really the game. And so for us, I would say, like at the beginning of my experience, membership was kind of seen on its own, and the marketing of membership was done separately, and it maybe relied on a different kind of a set of incentives to get people to sign up. And I just quickly came to understand that the proposition of this organization is really about the delivery of its mission. And that mission element, organizationally belongs to my colleagues. And so what I found at the beginning of this, and I think it's been transformational, was to create a win-win situation for them, which is I'm going to undertake the marketing and distribution of the content that you produce to expand the audience and engagement for you, which is what your metric is. And at the same time, I'm going to find ways then to harness that qualified audience into membership. And so like that's been a multi-year process where, let's say, something we work on very hard here is physician well-being. And a big problem in that right here in the States, of course, is physician burnout, the blocking and tackling up front, which is, well, then how come if we're doing so much work in that space, when I search for physician burnout, it's like, page 111 in Google. 5 years later, we're number one. Well, that only happens because we're working together. My team is building the platform. We're paying attention to all the technical aspects of that. We're creating content that we know speaks to customer needs, speaks to the needs of what the audience on Google is looking for. But we don't create that content like our subject matter experts do. And so that's the partnership that formed there. And once that began to take off, that opens up new opportunities for other ways to work together. And so that is my initial lesson there, which is like, and it's always been kind of part and parcel of it. It's like, how do you create win-wins so that you're all operating off the same goal? Or even if you have separate goals, that there's this big overlap that
Yeah.
can satisfy both of you.
So how does that work in practice in the beginning? Like I think Juan Cuesta also says this. He says like, or she says, I don't know, love it. This is the key of this approach, alignment. And I think that is the essential bit because if you come into an organization, especially on the CX side of things, there's usually someone leading marketing. There's usually someone leading digital. There's usually someone leading service who are also thinking about the customer, who are also thinking their part of the world is the most important one. So it's about building trust. It's
Yeah.
about creating the right incentives. Um, but what made you successful in doing so? Is it a matter of getting management approval or from your CEO to say like you're gonna do this? That's Todd, or was it truly like building that partnership across these functions that ultimately led you to lead them all? Like how would you advise other people in a position like yours in the beginning of AMA that see the need, but have some other people running the other functions that also see the need, but might
Yeah.
be looking for the same?
If I could just give advice to anybody out there, I know everybody wishes like they could just someone would just tell them that you have to do that and it would make it all better and everybody would follow what you want to do. That's just not how it works. Even in like smaller places, like it's always about kind of building that kind of trust and energy across teams, and it takes time. And so we've been through like a million different experiences with kind of partners across the organization. And it's when you can prove to them that what you say is going to happen does happen and that it can lead to growth. It does lead to the achievement of their objectives. But over the course of time, like what has happened is everybody's become focused on growth. And so their growth metrics may be a little bit different than mine, but they're aligned because we have found a machine that harnesses the power of the success of the delivery of our mission operation that is benefiting physicians and patients out there. And by doing that, has given us a way to reinforce the value of what we do and encourage people to join. So that's there's no way around it
Can
unless
you
unless you become like in charge or something. So
yeah, I have it easy. I'm the CEO. I can
mm,
can say it's important, and then no, that's also not how it works. Can you help me understand? And maybe you're willing to share. I don't know if you can share that, but like talk about. You said like the metrics are different from the different functions, but we found a way to build the machine so all of them together are working as one. I assume. Like, can you share some examples of literally what those metrics are? And I'll speak about an example I really like where the journey is the umbrella, like the end-to-end, the life cycle. That's typically what we see. But then to do this right, we'll see marketing owning the top of the funnel, right? How many people are actually in demand? How many people are we reaching? But what is the actual first stage of conversion? Like how many leads are we bringing in? Okay, great, typical marketing thing. But then what we have is sales coming in and say like, yeah, but we're actually building qualified pipeline that is this number. And then product comes in and says, yeah, but hang on a minute. Half of the pipeline is because of us, because people try the product and they're working in it. So they're influencing it. And all of a sudden, you have three metrics together defining how many new potential customers you're getting. And that's just a little piece of the journey. But bringing those KPIs together helps these people and their teams to be together in one place against that journey. Um, do you have something similar at the AMA? And can you speak to specific metrics that are useful to you and your team? Because I think that is the crux for many CX leaders today is that yes, we have NPS, yes, we have CSAT, yes, we do share of wallet, but what we actually want to do is talk about growth and bringing that back to the business is something we struggle with. How are you doing that? Can you share some of that?
Yeah. And again, it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, which is like a lot of those terms are very meaningful to like people in CX, but I don't think they ring as loudly as more customers and more revenue. So they're kind of intermediary. And so I'm always of the, and whatever job I've ever been, it's like, how do I help you produce more sales, get more customers? That's the job. And so I can employ a wide variety of things in the CX toolkit to
Uh,
be able to do that. And I have intermediary measures that say this is associated with positive growth, but at the end, if we're not racking up more customers and keeping more of them along the way, then how do I define value there? So that to me is my job, and I think what's so important about thinking about the chief experience officer role is that you do have somebody who's like looking at the big picture of how to knit all of those things together. And it really does have a win-win disposition and understands that that's what you've got to create across that, or everybody does end up with their own kind of disconnected set of metrics that theoretically should lead to growth, but maybe not because they're out of sync, out of whack. That's what like my technical term for that. It's kind of harness the power of all those things into like a team with one metric at the end of that says it's working.
yeah. Is there, I'm gonna take some questions also. Ron Polka says he's curious about operational, how you are aligning the thinking, planning, and working across the organization to bring that cohesive platform to market. And he says, assuming journeys were a key tool there, but breaking down silos can be challenging. So I think that the underlying question is like the blueprint was one artifact you used, but how fundamental were journeys and bringing people around journeys?
They're very fundamental for us. I was just thinking as you were asking the last question, it did remind me of like when I was here for my first year, and I was not running the digital publishing part of the operation, and we were kind of looking and saying, why is what we're doing out there not seem to be working? And we actually were able to demonstrate through our analytics that people that were entering the website at that time, like nothing was coming out the other end in terms of membership.
Right.
And so, walk yourself through that journey. Well, it could be that, the site that attracted all of the content was disconnected from the main membership site. It could be that there were no calls to action for membership there. We weren't producing the right content. We weren't delivering enough audience. All these different kind of components just had to be changed. And so we started again when there was, organizationally, we consolidated that work to say, this is a content marketing operation designed to produce content that our audience is interested in looking at and that reinforces our brand proposition and identifies qualified audience, not just for membership, but for our entire mission organization. And so that became the metric by which we started to judge what we were doing there. And that really changed everything for us as far as kind of the digital platform and metrics, and led to so many other changes along the way, because all of the things that hang off of that, like your commerce funnel, have to be changed too to keep up. You can't just start pouring in 1 million people and then have them like bounce because they can't make it through the commerce portion. So
This is the classic thing, right? Where sales goes to marketing and says, yeah, yeah, we can't sell because you have crappy leads. And marketing says, yeah, but we hit our quotas. And here's all the people that you are supposed to close and you can't. So this is the classic example. But what you're actually saying is by simply visualizing that whole journey where people engage with the content and seeing at the end of it that no members were actually coming out.
Yeah,
That was as simple as that, or was it a little
it
bit
is.
more
This is
complicated?
data. I know. It's like otherwise you're just like it goes back to like my days in advertising when it was all about opinion. It's like, oh, we should go with that ad because that's what the creative team likes. Go sell that thing. And then it took forever to figure out what was working and not working. And I mean, it could take years and a lot of money. That's just not how it operates anymore. And so the more that you can take yourself out of opinion based, you can have hypotheses. But now we have platforms that allow you to kind of pinpoint exactly where the fall off is and then say, like, okay, let's work together to figure out what's going wrong. Why is there the drop off there? And just address it just dispassionately, which is people are like, well, I don't like that word dispassionate, but I mean, it is. It's just, it's a problem. Figure out what's wrong and how to fix it.
Yeah. What is the state of the 10-second journeys at the AMA right now? I mean, there's always new friction coming up. It's never perfect. There's always new challenges. The world is changing. Like, how well are you executing against this today? Like, can you give a sample of what a day today or a week looks like in terms of like finding new friction, solving it, while also building out the bigger things for the future, right? Because I don't know, it maybe wasn't made explicit, but I think you will also agree, and you write a little bit about it in the book. It's not just about the friction, right? It's also about making bigger changes, but carving out step by step to get there. So how are you doing that on a day to day? Like walk us through like how that works in practice today.
It's funny because like if you look at the steps in the playbook, and which is essentially what the book is, like I could write those steps up on my whiteboard over there, and that would be kind of my daily agenda, is that I'm working on every one of those steps, which is
Okay.
like
But basically like
constant.
all the chapters in your book, maybe we should just call
Yeah,
them out for people. So I don't know. When do you want to do it, or you need a little
I would
reminder?
say
Yeah, I have it in front of
I'm
me.
just kind of looking at the number one is around customer definition, and trying to understand segments and how where your growth opportunities are and what you're trying to do there. And that really influences the brand proposition, which once defined doesn't really change, but the way that you express it through your story platform does. And so we're talking a lot about our campaign. We took the whole team through the new campaign yesterday. So my entire team, everybody knows what we're trying to do, and the combination of things that we are bringing to the table, which I love the way my team described it yesterday, which is three Ps. They were priorities, people, and proof. And that they're after my own heart. They've come up with like a 3P model, which is like to describe the essential elements of our campaign. And that's like literally, they just made that up. I love it so much, but it's just an example of continuous innovation. Now, I'll skip kind of toward the end where I talk about like friction-free commerce and using CX tools to eliminate friction. This morning, I met with my CX team, and they took me through the rollout and results so far of the introduction of live chat into our operation, where they're deploying it, what the results have been, what they're thinking about doing next. I wanted to understand how they're operationalizing it, what the expense is. It's so fascinating. Again, I just feel like they're so motivated toward the end of toward the end state of growth. They're just constantly innovating and running data-driven testing. They showed me the graphs, they show me the results, and then they make decisions based on that. And so every ounce of what's in this book is the playbook we've used here, but it's the aggregation of my understanding across like a whole bunch of different businesses over the past 30.
That's awesome. I think I'll open it up for some more questions from people. I have a few, but I want to ask you something else because I talk with a lot of chief experience officers, experience design leaders, and your vocabulary is slightly different than what I usually see. To what extent do you think your early career in brand has influenced that, and I'm sure it has. I mean, it made you who you are, but I'm curious, like what others can learn from this, because thinking through like segment and value prop and thinking how this like impacts the customers typically not a concern of CX. It's like in marketing, it's in brand, and
Yeah.
we get it and we learn from it and we take it in. But I'm really curious, like, what are the one or two things that you took away from working in brand at Leo Burnett, um, or in other clients that you worked with that have made you a better CX leader today?
Absolutely. And it's the first thing in my book. You can't be customer centric without the customer. And the number one mistake that I see over and over again at different businesses that I've worked on or other people is the lack of customer definition in a way that makes sense in the digital world today. And most people hop right to either some kind of product promise or to the product itself and try to retrofit from there without doing the hard work. And that's the number one thing I think I probably learned in my early days at P&G and at Leo Burnett especially is data-driven target segmentation and what constitutes an effective target definition. And it gets to your point that you talked about a couple minutes ago. It's like, well, we thought the problem was down here. Well, no, actually, it's up here. So, because you're either not talking to the right people or you're not talking to them about it in the right way. And what's amazing, it's like, no matter how long you work on something, like things change or there's things you didn't understand before. And that only comes through talking to customers and through research and other kind of quantitative means that the digital world affords right now to understand that better. So that's what I kind of learned up at the top part of my career. And then in the middle part is where content really entered the picture, digital content, audience development, and then after that, the commerce layer and customer service layers. And so my career trajectory has absolutely influenced how I think about experience. I I think that the original notion of how we think about it has just changed so much about because of the environment that
Right.
we exist in today, and we do need to modify it and to think more of it as an integrated system and not just something that happens in one department.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is the downside of talking about friction and removing friction and thinking about like the small pieces of the journey, because technically you don't really need to understand your audience to see the obvious things and remove some of them, but to do it fundamentally well, it's like, or we, and this isn't maybe another episode we should do, is like persona development is one thing, but if you don't do it data driven, you only have need-based profiles. And if you only do segmentation, well, then you know firmographics or you know consumer profiles, but you lack like the needs people have and bringing that together in the context of the journey and understanding how they go through. Like that is essential,
Yeah,
but friction hunt alone can still be done without it, which is a maybe a gap in the thinking that we still need to overcome as a
yeah.
field, because you don't need to have the whole holistic idea of the customer. You can just remove some of that. But
I have a funny song that I find inspiring in the world of customer friction, which is Seven Rings by Ariana Grande. Because I found that I see it, I like it, I want it, I got it, is the best description of customer experience there is today. And it really does speak to where of that friction exists. It's in between each one of those stages, and you have to address it as a whole to really think about it. It's not just demand creation up at the top. I see it, I like it. It's got to be, I got it. Like you
nice.
got to pay
Right.
attention the whole way through. Thank you,
I love that.
Ariana Grande. Yes.
Wow, I never made that connection. I can't unsee it or unlisten it anymore. Like you have the whole like experience framework some people use to know like see, think, do, love, right? And I think
Mm.
Google developed that one, which is like an umbrella for your experience, which is kind of like the song. Wow. All right,
I
we'll
see
put
it.
it
I
in the show
like it. I
notes.
want it. I got it. That goes out to
I got it.
Tony.
Yeah,
Seven
yeah, and
Rings.
I'm
That's
gonna
the song.
share it and I'm promoting it, right? And then count as one as the All right. Few more questions from the audience, as I promised. Joseph Cho, I hope I say that right. Well, there's a few questions from him, but I'll start with the first one, and I think it's related to the title of your book. You said or alluded to it a little bit, but like, how did you come up with the title? Title creation of a book is a process on its own. I know you have a maybe you were lucky or not, but like, how did you come up with it?
So this is a true story. That one of the things I did before I wrote the book, or even had a thought about writing the book, is I publish a lot on LinkedIn, and I posted something that basically said, and in today's world, the process doesn't take 10 months, 10 days, or 10 minutes. It takes 10 seconds. And in the comments, someone wrote, 10-second customer journey, exclamation point. And I responded and I said, I'm going to use that. And so whoever you are out there, I was never able to find it again. Thank you for giving me a catchy title for my book. But it is pretty catchy. And so I just kind of kept that in my mind. And when I was writing my book proposal, that seemed to go over pretty well.
Wow, that's cool. So if you're listening, get the royalties from Todd. He's asking for you. So show up wherever you are. That's a funny story. Oh my God. Where does the journey start and where does it end? There's another question from Joseph. And I think you mentioned it's a task journey, right? But you also mentioned the process of getting to that task of making an early decision and getting into market starts earlier. Do you have any definitions you use internally to say like, here's how we define where it starts, here's how we define where it ends?
So for us, it is end to end, and it does go by those lyrics again, which is like, it starts, how do you get someone to notice anything and see anything in these days, this day and age? One of the premises that I talk about in the book is we all have virtually unlimited capacity to uh, consume the things that we're interested in, and zero capacity for the things that we aren't. And so the job of anybody in an experienced business is figuring out how to become something that's interesting to people. And that is where the targeting part fits in. And it's got to be data-based, behavioral, and attitudinal in nature, and it's got to be predictive. And that is the beginning of the process for everyone, no matter what it is. Because once you define those things, again, before the clock is even running, I already know by the time that you come across this thing in whatever channel it's going to be that you are going to be interested and that I am talking to the right kind of person. And so that time is not wasted and there's not friction in that particular part of the journey. And then it goes all the way through the process to the other end, which is the continuation and satisfaction with product and the service aspect that you get throughout the process, not just at the end. So there are many elements. Again, I always say like the customer doesn't care about your organizational chart. It's just one thing to them. It's your product, your service, whatever it is wrapped up in you. So
Yeah.
make sure you keep them in mind.
It's actually worse. The journey happens no matter if you are there or not. They want to do this. They want to buy this. They want to get it, right? Um,
Yeah,
and
you
you,
ever like gone through a process and you're like, I'm just trying to buy this thing. Like, please let me do this. And it's like, wow, in this day and age, like there could be so many obstacles to be able to do that. It's amazing.
wow. Scott, I wanted to say, Todd, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you? I'm going to post the link to your book in the show notes. I'm sure it's available on Amazon and all the platforms where you buy your books. Anything specific you want to call out, like a link to the book website or to you, like if they have more questions, where can they find you and where can we find you?
So number one, hit me up on LinkedIn. I would love it if you would follow me. And I post a lot on customer experience and lessons from the book. I also do have a website, toddunger.com, which you can check out more about the book. And there's contact information, all sorts of stuff like that. But LinkedIn is probably my ongoing platform.
That's awesome. So we'll put a link in for those who cannot find it, for everyone who's already following you. Thank you for being with us, Todd. This was great. Highly recommend your book to everyone. Should hand it out. Not all day-to journeys are 10-second journeys. We do think there's this end-to-end thing where all these 10-second journeys fit in. But I think that was the whole point of
You
having
can
you
just
on.
be
Really.
inspired by the
Exactly. And I
speed.
think
Yes.
if everything can be 10-second journeys, like the world will be a better place to some extent. So thank you, Todd, for being here and sharing some of your wisdom with us. And I wish you a lovely day.
It was great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone, for being here and see you next time.
Bye bye.
know, like see, think, do, love, right? I think
Mm.
Google developed that one, which is like an umbrella for your experience, which is kind of like the song. Wow. All right.
I
We'll
see
put
it.
it
I
in the
like
show
it. I
notes.
want it. I got it. That goes out to
I got it.
Tony.
Yeah,
Seven
yeah. And
rings.
I'm